Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for virtually joining us at the virtual Grassroots Democrats HQ. My name is Eve Levenson, and I am an advisor for the Grassroots Dem HQ that, along with Mana Shushtari, who you'll hear from in a minute, helped to lead all of our youth programming. Today's program was created out of the curriculum committee of the Grassroots Dem HQ Fellows, who really power a lot of the work that the HQ does. This group of fellows came together to put to really create what the curriculum is that they want to learn and through their fellowship, but through that realize that there were certain things that they wanted to be able to share with the greater Grassroots STEM community and with our youth affiliates. And so today's panel with some incredible people who work in politics is the first of many that will be external events that we'll be doing, and we hope that you will join. With that, I'm going to pass it over to one of our fellows to introduce our first panelist. I hope you all really get a lot out of today's conversation. I personally have been so lucky to get to work with some of the folks who are on today's panel and have learned a lot from them as a young person myself working in politics. We'll have time for questions at the end, but if you want to put things into the chat, please feel more than welcome to. And I'll hand it over to.
So our first panelist today is Adam Berkowitz. He is a political and communication strategist and has been Congressman Mike Levin's campaign manager for the past 2 election cycles. He has worked on a variety of campaigns at different levels and serves as a mentor to a number of young, ambitious professionals.
The next panelist is Shaniqua McClendon. Shaniqua has worked in politics for a decade and currently serves as political director for Crooked Media, home to the popular podcast Pod Save America. In this role, Shaniqua led the creation of their voter engagement program, Vote Save America, and volunteer engagement program, Adopt a State, which has educated millions of voters, recruited hundreds of thousands of volunteers, and raised millions of dollars for progressive causes and candidates. Prior to Crooked Media, Shaniqua worked on Capitol Hill, serving as a policy advisor to Senator K.R. Hagan and Congresswoman Alma S. Adams. Shaniqua earned a BA in journalism and mass communications and a BS in business administration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and a master's in public policy from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. She is also a fellow at the USC Center for the Political Future.
Our next panelist this evening is Sarah Fellman from Charlotte, North Carolina. She's been an organizer and organizing manager for 7 years in electoral, labor, and movement issue spaces. Currently, she serves as a lead organizer for the North Carolina Association of Educators, and most recently in 2020, she ran one of the largest congressional field programs in the country as field director of the Christy Smith's CA25 campaign. Prior to working for Christy Smith, she has served as regional organizing leadership for Elizabeth Warren in Washington and Iowa, and a regional field director for the 2018 Pennsylvania Democratic Coordinated Campaign. The campus organizing director and then training director for the North Carolina Democratic Party, organizer for the Andrea Campbell for Boston City Council, and an organizing intern for Kay Hagan's 2014 Senate re-election campaign. She is a 2019 graduate of Harvard College with a major in government, and she took 3 semesters off of school to work on campaigns, in addition to organizing on issue and labor campaigns while in college.
Our next panelist is Jarrell Varela. In 2019, Jarrell was hired as California Field Director for the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. Under his leadership, the campaign knocked on 2.2 million doors and made 7.2 million calls, winning the 2020 California presidential primary by 8 percentage points. Currently, Jarrell serves as a partner for Brennan Consulting, a grassroots consulting firm focused on electing progressive candidates of color who support policies that uplift the working class. Their teams have recently helped to elect progressive champions, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, District Attorney George Gascon, Assembly Member Reggie Jones Sawyer, and Senator Sidney Kumlager. During his time as Deputy and Statewide Director for California Vote Project, Jarrell assisted in registering over 250,000 Democrats throughout the state from 2010 to 2018. As statewide director, Jarrell managed over 250 employees in 13 assembly districts. He has been field director for multiple assembly races that have helped elect Senator Richard Pan, Assembly Member Jose Mendia, Assembly Member Rudy Salas, and Assembly Member James C. Ramos.
Our next panelist is Camille Zapata. She's a youth organizer and experienced campaign manager with an expertise in creative digital communications. She's also a board member of California Women's List and a volunteer for Justice Democrats. Recently, she managed a race for Dr. Susan Telemantes Eggman, the first openly LGBTQ+ Latinx woman elected to the California Senate. Camille has managed local, state, and federal races and previously worked in the nonprofit sector, advocating for equitable education policy in California. She's a first-generation graduate of UC Santa Cruz, where she received her BA in cultural anthropology. Currently, Camille serves as the San Joaquin County's first Latina chief of staff for Supervisor Kathy Miller, third woman elected to serve on the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors. She looks forward to supporting women candidates who center social, racial, environmental, and economic justice in the fight for a more equitable future. She resides in her hometown of Stockton.
All right, thank you everyone. First and foremost, thank you to all the panelists for being here and for sharing your knowledge and advice with everyone in the audience. We're so excited to have you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Manish Shushari, and I'm the Field and Communications Coordinator at Grassroots Democrats HQ, and I'm 20 years old, and I'm also a student at San Jose State University. So let's jump in. So the first question for the panel, and by the way, all the questions were developed by the fellowship program, is how did you get started in politics, and what was your first job, and how did you get it? And this is for anyone on the panel.
I'm happy to get it.
Go ahead.
Again, I'm Shaniqua McClendon. I was just introduced. I'm Shaniqua McClendon. My first, I guess, real job in politics was an internship at the White House. I, before that, wanted to get into business because, I didn't grow up with a lot, and I figured I can go make some money and have a different kind of adulthood than my childhood. But as you get older, you realize that the government and politics plays a huge role in the experiences that you have as a child. And so that's what kind of shifted me to public service. And then in 2008, which would have been the end of my junior year and beginning of my senior year in college, Barack Obama, well, I guess he started running in 2007, but anyway, he was running for president, and I just became obsessed with politics after that and consumed way too much cable news. But that's what got me interested in moving to DC. And I was trying to move there for a bunch of different jobs that I'm glad did not work out. But what ended up working out was an internship at the White House. And the Affordable Care Act was passed while I was there. And so that really just solidified my interest in public policy as a way to improve people's lives.
Camille, you go first.
Hi, folks. Camille Zapata. My trajectory into politics, I believe, is a little unusual. I really didn't get politically active until after I graduated college in 2018. So to be honest, I didn't really tune too much into 2016's election, but I knew the hell who Bernie Sanders was. And so I think the way that I got in is that I came back to college and I really started looking for mentorship from community leaders, specifically around ethnic studies. And I was learning around what was going on in our local school district, around a lot of, to be frank, human rights violations that was happening between law enforcement and a lot of students of color. And there I started really contextualizing, what the hell is going on amongst elected officials here in my area, who makes decisions, what are these structures, what is like the allowance, of this, what is going on. And so then I started learning around why our local school board was so important, and how often did they run, and how do you run and do all of these things. And so I heard about a really phenomenal woman named Candelaria Vargas, who was running for school board. And I was doing local coalition building in South Stockton, where my family's from and where both of my grandmothers still reside. And so yeah, I said, hey, I really want to help you. You're about ethnic studies. You understand redlining. You know what that means. You understand, the disparities that we face as people of color. And the really specific needs and value that we bring, to our community. And so she said, sure, you can join my campaign. Do you want to be my campaign manager? And I said, I don't know what the hell that means, but I do know that I care very much about students because I was that student. And I want to help. And we won by 182 votes, which was flippin' insane. I went down to get a campaign up against Jim Costa. We ran Kim Williams, who earned Brand New Congress's endorsement. And I came back up home to Stockton and ran Dr. Susan Talamantes Eggman, just kind of kept going. But I think the thing that really grounded me and entered me into the space was around education equity, and the really large disparities that my community and now, right, so many communities face and continue to. So I'll pass the mic to Adam.
Am I muted? No.
Adam, you just,
Okay.
there you go.
Sorry about that. Thanks again for having me. I think what's amazing hearing everyone else's stories is there is no one path in. You know, I think everybody has a unique, kind of haphazard way. Personally, I was an intern on Bill Clinton's presidential campaign my senior year in college, but I graduated and I went to work in advertising and entertainment. And it wasn't until right before the end of Clinton's term where they asked me to help volunteer and drive the press van in the motorcades, just as a random, because I worked in media and I knew a lot of the folks who were working, on Clinton's advance team. Next thing I know, Barbara Boxer in 2004, needed staff, and she thought she was going to have, a serious race. And I had never actually worked on a campaign before, like paid job or anything. And I would, went from up here in my entertainment career to starting on the ground level. And it absolutely blew me away. And I said, I don't, everything that I'd worked so hard, all of the goals and destinations that I had in advertising and commercials and, everything else, I was like, none of that's actually making a difference in people's lives. Working with the senator, working with those people, hearing, the stories from the folks that we would meet on the campaign trail, I was like, no question, I'm making a major career change. So this was never my intent. And probably twice or 3 times a year, I say to myself, how am I working in this business again? But there's no other place I'd rather be.
Thank you all. And as we're learning about where the panelists have come from, we have 100 people in this Zoom room, which is amazing. So if y'all could introduce yourselves in the chat, put your name, your city, your state, and maybe how old you are or what school you go to, that'd be awesome. So the panelists know who they're talking to. And so as y'all do that, let's move on to our next question. What is the hardest part about kickstarting your career, and how did you overcome the obstacles? And for this, we're going to start with Sarah.
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I think the hardest part about kickstarting my career, and I think many folks in politics find this as well, is really getting your first job and getting your foot in the door. I think that after that, a lot of things can come easier, but a lot of times it really is about that first job. And so for me, my first job in politics was as an intern for former US Senator Kay Hagan from my home state of North Carolina. And the way that I got that job was just extreme persistence. I knew I wanted to work for Kay Hagan because I was really fired up about the voter suppression that was going on in North Carolina at the time. Is still going on in North Carolina, is going on in Georgia right now today. And I signed up on Kay Hagan's website to volunteer at least once a day. I emailed her official office at least once a day. I didn't really know what I was doing. Nobody got back to me for a while. And then one day I was at my high school swim meet and I got a call and this guy says, hi, I'm Daniel from Kay Hagan's campaign. Will you canvass for Kay Hagan on Saturday? And I said, oh my God, I've been waiting for you guys to call. I would love to. Also, what's canvassing? And I learned later that that is not what people usually say to that question. But I was just incredibly energetic and I really, really wanted to be there. And I got there and this guy realized, oh, this is a 17-year-old. I'm going to ask her to be my intern. And he asked me to be my intern on my first day before I knocked my first set of doors. And I said, yes, I would love to. And then I was an intern. And I think from there, having that connection and knowing some people in politics, having a little experience and knowing what it was like, at least as an intern, and being able to see what the field organizers and the regional field directors above me did and have a little bit of context on their work helped me understand the process that I went through to get to be an intern, helped me understand what I could talk about in an interview and put on my resume for my next job, and helped me have people that would back me up and could say, yes, Sarah would be a great person to hire as an organizer. And from there, it was much smoother sailing. So my advice is be persistent, sign up a million times, keep contacting someone, and they would be a fool to turn you down.
That is such a great story about the need to be persistent, particularly in this field. So, Jarrell, how did you overcome the obstacles of kickstarting your career?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? I think that what's really important about my story is that, I went to school for city planning, urban development, and was like bartending and serving tables. And how I got into this was a person who's still to this day, my biggest mentor, Chris Santinelli, invited me to do a survey project where we had to go door to door and get people to fill out a survey for an assembly member. And so what was hard about that was that, I was changing, not really a career, but I was transitioning into a career. It was something that was new. It was something that excited me and made me understand that like there was a lot out there that I didn't really know about. And so, one of the biggest challenges for me actually happened probably about 2 years into me doing political field work, in that I came up on a year that was odd. And what I mean by that is that there weren't any elections or very few elections. And so the elections that I had to do, I actually lived in Sacramento and I had to come down to Los Angeles at the time and do school board races during an odd year. And so that was a real big challenge because I went through about half of that year not having a job and being a little bit scared of like, okay, is this what I really want to do when every other year I may not have the ability to work and make money? And so what I had to overcome is like really understanding that it was bigger, than just this 1 year, and that, hey, next year there's going to be an opportunity. And if you have that opportunity to make the best of it. And I really tried to do that back in 2012. So I think that was the biggest issue for me, but do want to, echo what Sarah said about being persistent and being flexible. You have to be that in order to, find jobs. Sometimes you've got to go across the country, to find a job, or go across the state, or go somewhere else. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me.
Thank you both. And so getting into this kind of career path it's difficult to enter, but as Sarah said, and as Jarrell said, persistence really is key. But it takes a lot of motivation internally to have that persistence. So my next question is, what led you to enter politics? It's a crazy, crazy job. It demands lots of flexibility and time. And what made you enter your specific field, whether it be issue advocacy, whether it be electoral politics, or working on the official side? And let's start with Camille.
Yeah, I'll back for a minute and say that, y'all, I can't underestimate sliding into someone's DMs. The way that I got my first piece was I was like, hey, this is me. This is kind of my skill set. I'm fresh out of college. This is what I'm up to. Where do I go? Just point me in a direction. And that was actually Mayor Michael Tubbs who answered, or former Mayor Michael Tubbs that had answered, and glad he answered my Facebook message. But in terms of what kind of brought me here, to be honest, I don't know. again, this isn't something that I really expected to do. I think that it's something that you kind of like gradually find. So again, issue advocacy was the way that I really got in. And I'll really commend that. The reason that I was able to climb or to be in the positions that I'm in is because I had a really firm set of women leaders in my community and in my personal realm that was really willing to sit down and talk to me and listen to me and explain and teach me around how do these systems work? Why are they structured the way they are? What is the historic background? How is your life, or what is my life experience, and how is that applicable to what's going on now? And so really like sewing all of those threads was a really important start in order for me to get really like passionate and really grounded in the work that I was doing. I'm also a person that comes from a space, my mom's side is Puerto Rican and my dad's side is Mexican American. And so for me, what's really been a drive is, you know, for me, I'm like, if you can lift a woman up, like you lift her whole community up. You know, there's so many single households that are led by women. You know, we can really tend to and care for our society if we really target and uplift women in all aspects of their life. And so I think recently for me, that's been a real central point of how do we continue to move and break those barriers. And I think some best advice I would kind of give to enter the work is like, go with your gut, go what feels good, do things that you're really passionate about. If that's the environment, because you're like, screw the fossil fuel system, like let's get out here and move away from that. And, or if it's around ethnic studies or, you know, any of these pieces, like just don't be scared to reach out. And if you hit a wall, that's okay, but you only need the right person to respond to you, and then you'll keep plugging away. So do that, do things you believe in, put yourself out there, email people. Like sometimes you really have to find the door, but I think once you kind of get in your path, things start opening up really quickly because you're passionate about it.
Thanks, Camille. Passion really is very central to why people pursue careers in politics. Let's hear from Adam.
So, you know, as I said, I was in entertainment and thought everything was great and the country was on a great trajectory, you know, under President Clinton. And then, you know, it was probably because I was young and didn't know as much as I know now, but I just assumed that trajectory was always going to continue. You know, I was like, okay, great, you know, job's done. I mean, I just helped out here and there. And then next thing you know, we have 9/11 and Afghanistan and then Iraq. And the country, you know, the economy started slowing down. And then somebody who I'd always admired, Barbara Boxer, you know, every time she would come and speak publicly, you know, people would come and protest because she was one of the 23 senators that voted against, you know, invading Iraq. And people would come and throw plastic fetuses at her because she was so pro-choice. And I'm thinking to myself, this is one of the people I admire the most, you know, that I've ever met. And if this is what she has to face on a day-to-day basis, you know, considering like, I believe her positions are correct, she's doing the right thing. You know, I was just like, I just can't, you know, continue making commercials for, you know, Target and Toyota and everything else. You know, I wanted to go, you know, be on her team. And what it didn't matter, you know, whether I was getting her coffee or if I was staffing her at events or whatever, I didn't care. Like, I wanted in. And like a lot of my fellow panelists have said, I had no idea what I was doing, nothing. You know, I had never knocked on a door before. I didn't know what canvassing was. I didn't know what end of quarter was. You know, like I didn't know any of that. But, you know, it's once you're in, once this is your passion, and it might take a couple of internships, opportunities, jobs, before you really figure out, okay, this is the lane that I really like. Like I think each of us have mentioned at one point internships or interning. To me, that is like the number one best way to end up getting a job, on a campaign or on the official side or, with an organization. I actually have an example, I think, here on the Zoom. Garrick Urbano was an intern for Mike Levin's campaign, for our internship program the summer of I think it was 2019. And then when a position opened up, we hired him. And then he had to defer going back to school because we kept him on the campaign through the end of the election. But internships, whether it's summer internships, or during the school year, through university, doesn't matter. As many internships as you can possibly get yourself into, do it.
Thank you, Adam. And Shaniqua, I'm really curious because you mentioned that you studied business and you wanted to go into business. So how did you make that transfer from business into politics?
Yeah, well, the first thing I did was I turned down a job I had at an investment bank, and my father was like, "What are you doing?" And then I went to work in a temporary job at United Way, raising money for our community partners, and that's when I was still in North Carolina. And then, eventually, I just knew I wanted to help people. Everyone kept saying, "Shaniqua, what does that mean? Like, what do you want to do?" And all I knew is I wanted to help people, and I didn't really have the words for what I wanted to do. But throughout my, at that point, very, 18, 19 years of life, I knew that education was something that had benefited me tremendously. And while I was in college, I was at Keenan Flagler Business School in their undergraduate program. And there were 600 students in the school, and there were fewer than 10 Black students in the school. And generally underserved communities were just not really represented in the school. And I took that, and then my internship at this investment bank, again, there was a lack of diversity there. And I started to wonder, like, why? And I really thought that if more people had access to the education that I had, that they would have these same opportunities as me. I later learned that a lot more than education goes into fixing a lot of the social issues that exist in our country. But that was what got me interested in policy. And I went to the White House, and so I interned in the student correspondence department. So I wasn't working on policy, but I was reading a lot of letters from children, from students, and was able to hear a lot of the unfortunate circumstances they were facing. No more physical education, no more music education, their schools were crumbling. And that really got me more interested in education policy. And then I got to work on education policy when I got to Capitol Hill. That experience had its ups and downs because I started right before the Tea Party came in. And, I think that experience, I'd do it all over again, but it jaded me just a bit. But in the 6 years that I was there, during my last 2 years, we finally reauthorized No Child Left Behind. And, education policy is what got me interested in politics. But I'm at Crooked now because when I thought I was going to get out of politics after I left the Hill, but then Donald Trump won while I was in graduate school, and I was like, okay, I'm like going back into this. But I knew I did not want to go back to the Hill because I wanted to work somewhere where I could get politicians elected that represented the same values as I had. A lot of the Democrats on Capitol Hill while I was there, did the best they could. Republicans took control of the House, 2 years after I got there. A few months after I got there. But there were also Democrats just not working as hard as I feel like they could have to push for a progressive agenda. So I knew I wanted to go somewhere where we could help get more progressive Democrats elected so I could start to see some of those policies that got me interested in politics to begin with.
Thank you. I've noticed for a lot of our fellows as well, what that got them into like our fellowship program and encouraged them to apply was the fact that they could actually help get people who reflect their values elected. So on that note, and like applying to jobs and such, oftentimes it is actually very hard for young people to be taken seriously in professional spaces, which is something I've experienced in the past, but I'm here won't experience, I promise. But it's especially true for people in politics. Young people just aren't taken as seriously. So how can we, as young people applying to our first few jobs, getting in there, experiencing this professional atmosphere for the first time, be taken more seriously? And I'll go to Sarah first.
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, I'm 24, so I am definitely a young person and have, in just about every role I've had an instance where I was not taken seriously because of that, or because of another intersection of my identities. And I think definitely it's a huge problem. And I think the first thing that I'll say is that that you deserve respect as a young person because you're a person. And I think that there are a lot of things that we can change about ourselves, but I think it's really on the people that are not respecting us and taking us seriously to change. And I have a couple pieces of advice about that. I think number one, when you are in a job interview, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And I really encourage you to ask them questions about the work culture at that organization, about their style of management, about their culture of collaboration. And if you feel any red flags, if you feel like this is a person who is really going to steamroll you and not respect you, listen to yourself and trust yourself. I think number two, unionize wherever you're working, form a union. I think it's, just an incredible tool to be able to advocate for yourself and your colleagues. And I think number three, don't change who you are. I'm someone that apologizes more than I'm supposed to. I say like and I end every sentence in an email with an exclamation point, and that's who I am. That's how I've been socially conditioned to be as a young woman, and I'm not going to change that. And people need to take me seriously as who I am. I think that said, a couple things that you can do. One, when you get into a new workplace, I would definitely have conversations with your boss, with other people that are senior to you in the organization, and sort of start to feel them out and ask them questions, ask how they like to receive feedback, ask if you can share an idea, and sort of get to know who in the organization will listen and does care about what you think and does want to implement things that you came up with and is not going to just take credit for your work or discredit it because you're the one that came up with it. And then lean on them. And if other people are discrediting your work, when you sort of build that alliance and relationship with somebody that does have institutional power where you're working, that's someone that you can hopefully go to. And I know many times in my career, I have gone to mentors for that reason. And I've, said, hey, I really feel like I'm not being taken seriously. I led a meeting of 15 50-year-old white male lawyers at the age of 19 as voter protection coordinator. It was an experience. And I went to my executive director and I said, hey, Kimberly, I really feel like the lawyers aren't taking me seriously. And then they're also not doing the work themselves. Can you, give me, a good word? Can you step in and help me out? And she did. And when you build those relationships, you can find people that'll do that for you.
Really solid advice. Darrell, I saw you unmuted yourself right as the question was asked, so I'll pass it to you.
No, I just kind of, I knew that I was coming up, and I think that what's really important, where I came from, I kind of got started a little bit late. I was 27 when I knocked on my first door, but as a manager, I've hired a lot of young people, whether it be on the state level or as canvassers or leads. And, one thing that I'll say about the state level, especially working in the Assembly or the Senate in California, is guess what? Most of the staff members are young. There's a lot of people who are 25 and under, who are right out of college. And so I would like to start with, if you're interested in getting really in and getting a job or an internship, it's really important, start on the state level. A lot of people think about going to Congress, and I understand that. But you can learn a lot on the state level, and lately you see a lot more things happening. I would say that, when I'm looking at hiring folks and once they maybe start, I'm looking at folks who prove themselves, who are down to put in the effort and the work. I think that there's a lot of people out there who, including myself, who are maybe older, who want to be mentors and want to see young talent and cultivate them so that they can be better than I was, and I think of a lot of people like Assemblymember Sabrina Cervantes started with us doing voter registration, but you saw how hard she worked and you saw what she was willing to do to make sure that she succeeded. And then you see that trajectory happen. So I thought that Sarah's advice is extremely important because I've been in situations, even at 27 or 29, where people don't take me seriously because I'm younger. And that's got to be frustrating. But I think it is important to, once you do get in, to have those conversations with people, because a lot of times it may not be someone who looks like you who's going to be your biggest advocate or maybe your mentor. My biggest mentor is a 50-year-old Italian guy, and I may be a mentor for, a 23-year-old Latina, that happens. And so what I will say is make sure to, when you do come into a position, understand that, hey, I am young, but I am intelligent. I understand what I'm doing, but that I understand that it's going to take work in order to progress and maybe get to a higher level, and be willing to do that. And I think that that's super important to understand, because the younger generation than me is much better at digital stuff. And I've learned a ton of things in regards to doing digital things and how to work my iPad or my computer that, guess what, I'm not as good at. And so understand what your strengths are too, and what you can bring to the table, because there's tons of things that you're much more equipped to do better than someone who's 20 years older than you.
I'm going to roll right into that, because young people, like, y'all are so fire and like bold at what you do. And like, I know the first thing, power dynamics. Power dynamics is alive. The patriarchy is alive. It hurts women. It hurts people of color. Men, it hurts you too. You know what toxic masculinity is. You've probably gotten into it. And I think that's to say, one, it is so deeply important that you all know what you bring. And you all know that you have value into where you go. And it's critical, like your presence and your opinion and you being on staff is critical to the success of so many spaces. And so you really need to leverage that. You need to leverage that when you are the one doing the labor. You also need to be enforcing that you're in the decision-making table, period. Because there will be spaces where young people will be consistently asked to do the labor on an agenda that they are not informing. And so when you enter spaces, I encourage you and I implore you to be at the decision-making table and to demand that of the skills and the talents that you bring. Secondly, around like that, those power dynamics, Sarah spoke to this really eloquently, and girl, I know you have probably gone through the ringer. And as someone that's a 25-year-old chief of staff on a very conservative board of supervisors, and Supervisor Miller being the only woman, I would really just note that, yes, you need to have people in your pocket to pull out and say, hey, I need to lean on you. My number one rule is never go into anywhere alone. If you go in a meeting, you better take somebody. If you go into like a community meeting or a meeting with an elect or whatever that looks like, bring somebody. So one, they can bear witness to what happens. And then two, so that you can debrief and lean on each other to form next steps. Secondly, something that is so important that I often practice is that I document the hell out of what's going on. I write it down. If there's an encounter, if there is a situation where the power dynamic is just not in your favor and it's not going too well, like document it, put it, like throw a Google Doc, put that down, put the date, put the time, put who was there, that kind of stuff. You're gonna wish that you put it in an email and you left a thread. So that's another piece. And I think just finally, unfortunately, this is the reality. It's wrong, it's deeply unfair, but we as young people, unfortunately, right, the perception specifically for women is that we have so much more to prove. It's a reality and it's real, and it's difficult to navigate. But my things that I go to is like what you wear. It gives me a really big sense of joy. It's like my shield of armor. I wear my Telfar bag to the Board of Supervisors, and I feel like it's a piece of armor. Dress up, not because to impress them, but to feel good within yourself, to have the confidence to step into spaces, and really reinforce respect. And I know that confrontation can feel scary, but it's so deeply important that you all stick up for one another, that you stick up for other people, and just say like, yo, I don't, you really just have to reinforce respect. I don't appreciate the way that you spoke to me. Can you clarify, please, what you mean, because I don't understand where you're coming from, but I want to. All of these really proactive communication skills is going to help you also earn respect. So I know it's hard, but y'all got it. Dress cute, feel good, put your head tall. And I think the last thing I'll note, and I feel like this is really important, when I worked for now Senator-elect Susan Talamantes Eggman, I mean, I see how tall her head had to be. And she's a well-respected woman. But even she walks in spaces and she's still not the first person to get a handshake, or doesn't get the eye contact, or doesn't get the respect, right? Like these things don't just happen to us. It happens even to the people that have been in the game forever. And so what I noticed really quickly is she has to hold her head up high. She has to feel good in order for me to get respect. As her campaign manager, who's young, who's a Latina, I have to hold my head high. I have to walk into a space confidently so that my field director can walk in and be respected. So our intern can be respected. So know that when you go into spaces, you also are the measurement for other people and how you will be respected. And so I just really implore you to do that. Y'all got this. So I'll pass the mic. Thanks for the space.
Thanks, Camille. I just want to point out, Dustin, Camille's former employee, says that is 100% spot on. So she has the employee endorsement for her advice. And that actually brings me to our next question. So everyone on this panel has been in a position to hire other folks. So when you're hiring, what do you look for on resumes, especially when you're looking to hire entry-level jobs? And is there anything that is like an immediate disqualifier when you're hiring? And let's start with Shaniqua.
Typically, there's not much that will be an automatic disqualifier for an entry-level position. I know that everyone doesn't have access to the same resources and things like that, especially when they're getting started early in their career. And politics is an industry that even on the left is not as diverse as it should be. And that's not even from like a racial and ethnic standpoint. If you can't afford to work for free or work for very little money, it is very hard to, one, enter politics. You know, my internship at the White House was unpaid. I just was fortunate that I had lived at home for 6 months and saved up $4,000 and somehow managed to live off of that for 5 months. And so because of that, I will never, usually, nothing will disqualify anyone. I mean, unless like, you know, if you like work for Donald Trump or something, that would be a disqualifier. But things I look for, I think that communication skills are really important in politics. So be that written, spoken, just being able to communicate with people effectively And I think customer service jobs are a really good indicator of one's ability to do that, especially when I was working on the Hill. I always saw, I mean, and I think the same can be said in campaigns, like voters and constituents are the customers and your boss is the product, and you have to make sure they're happy. And so someone who is used to dealing with upset customers or just able to communicate policies for their employer, is usually good at coming into these spaces and doing the same thing for whatever it is we're trying to sell, whether, you know, that's a candidate or just democracy in general, some kind of policy. And, you know, in addition to customer service, I just try really hard to give a fair shake to people who maybe didn't go to Ivy League schools or, you know, elite institutions, or don't have a ton of political internships on their resume, because I guess I think about myself. When I was in high school, I worked at Domino's Pizza. I spent a lot of time, I volunteered at the Ronald McDonald House most of my time in college. I was fortunate enough to have internships, but they all ended up being in financial services. And even thinking about the opportunity to intern at the White House, there were 120 of us. There were definitely a handful of students who got there because of their parents' connections. And I saw that happen time and time again on Capitol Hill, especially during the summer when college students mostly applied, which a lot of dynamics there that I didn't like. And so now when I'm hiring for entry-level positions, I think instead of trying to weed people out, I'm always trying to have a broader scope to bring as many people in as possible. You know, that's what is happening now with Crooked, and I'm probably going to be interning way too many interns for one position that we, interviewing too many people for one position that we have. But I'm just really big on making sure that everyone gets a chance. But I am not everyone. So, you know, in case your resume ends up in front of someone who is not, you know, being, I don't want to say that thoughtful, because it takes a lot of time to hire for positions that are really competitive. But make sure that there are no typos. Read your resume out loud, your cover letters out loud. Make sure that when you hear yourself say it, you don't identify any, you know, errors or anything. Yeah, that's important too. Sharing it with other people, because if you look at something 15 times, you're probably looking over the same error multiple times. And even if you don't have the political experience or the specific experience you think is necessary for a job, talk to someone, because I guarantee you there is some way that you can tie your experiences into the jobs that you're applying for. For example, like what I just said about customer service. And I'll just share this quick story, because if I had, you know, listened to myself, I wouldn't have this job at Crooked right now. But the person who shared the opportunity with me, I looked at it and said, oh, I don't have that bullet right there. I don't have that experience. And I know that women tend to do that a lot. And she responded back and said, you know, what would a man do? And I thought he'd still apply for the job. So that is what I ended up doing. And I say that to say, don't be discouraged by what you see in a job description, because those things are flexible. And normally, you know, no one is 100% qualified for a job that they're going after, because otherwise they probably would be going after something else if they were 100% qualified for it. So don't be discouraged. Make sure you thoroughly run through your resume, share it with other people, and just, you know, I see resumes and cover letters as kind of a story about who you are and why you tie into this opportunity. And if you tell it in a compelling way, you will get people's attention when they're looking to hire.
Yes, I would like to add on to that. I think that Shaniqua brought up some really good points, because I was going to say, you stole it. I was going to say, you know, don't have a typo on your resume. I think that shows, you know, you're not taking it serious. But other than that, look, I'm going to give you a chance. You know, and I think that it's important that you know, that you may put in a resume or whatever, but like, don't be afraid to call people. Right. You know, I think a lot of times, pretty much my generation and younger, we like to text. You know, we've gotten so far away from actually having face-to-face conversations or calling people. And it's refreshing when you have people who will call and follow up, you know, follow up. Hey, you may have applied, follow up and let people know, hey, I'm really interested in this job. But I think that Shaniqua brought up so many good points about like the fact that, hey, I personally, I wouldn't have been able to do any kind of internships because I had rent to pay. You know, ever since I was 18, I lived by myself, and you have to make money. That's the American way. And it's hard because there's some people that have a better opportunity and maybe they can live at home or whatever the situation is, and they shouldn't be put down or anything because of that. That's great for them, that they have the opportunity, but a lot of people don't. And I think I touched on it earlier, like that was the biggest scaring point for me to continue in this work was, can I make a living out of this? Can I put a roof over my head? Can I live, to be honest? And sometimes that's really hard, but I know that for myself, it's very hard for me not to at least give you a chance for an interview. Yes, you can interview and really screw yourself over by not being confident, by, not asking questions, not seeming to care, not giving good answers. That's where you can really lose it, I think, personally for me. But, we hire a lot of people who are entry level, and really what I'm looking for, we've talked about service industry. I was a server bartender. Guess what? If you can serve and bartend, you can walk doors and you can
100%.
talk to voters, and a script, and how to upsell and all that kind of stuff that you may need to do. And I will tell every person here, if you ever work as a server or a bartender, call me. I will hire you like that, because I guarantee you'll be good at that. Right?
Yeah, 100% on service industry. That can be an incredible, or really just any field where you're interacting with people and have to interact politely and in a but I think one thing that I'll add to this conversation is I think on resumes, I try to be understanding, and I wish more people were understanding that knowing how to write a resume and being coached on that resume is something that requires a lot of times a lot of privilege to access, to even know to look to access. And so when I'm hiring for entry-level jobs, I'm really not looking at, is your resume pretty? Is it well worded? Is it in the socially accepted correct order? I totally understand people don't have that. I think honestly, your resume is really just a gateway to your interview. And I think really the red flags that I have are one, lying, don't lie, have seen it, don't do it. And two, I think that coming across very, braggadocious or full of yourself, or acting like you know everything, is I think another red flag. And I think that can show up as in a resume or an interview. I think when I'm interviewing folks for an entry-level position, I'm looking for someone who is self-aware, who can reflect on their weaknesses as well as their strengths, because that's someone who wants to learn and probably has a growth mindset and is going to grow into the role. Someone who's hungry and passionate, because if you're hungry and passionate and there for the right reasons, you're going to be excited about new tasks and working hard and all the things that we ask you to do. Just someone who wants to learn. One of the questions I always ask is, how do you take constructive criticism? Can you tell me about a time when you received constructive criticism? As well as, what is your greatest weakness? And I think anytime someone is like, well, actually, I was really in the right, or my least favorite interview answer is, my greatest weakness is perfectionism. That's not a weakness. No, it's not. And that trying to sell a strength as a weakness is not what people are looking for. They're looking for, can you honestly admit, yes, I have a weakness and I know I do, and I'm working to grow on it. Because it's not about like, what is the weakness itself? It's, are you a reflective person who doesn't believe that you're God's gift to this green earth and better than everyone else already? And instead is someone that can learn and grow from other people. So your weakness is not perfectionism. That is my piece of advice.
100.
Can I add one thing to what Sarah said? Just to connect with what you just said, I actually, when it comes to resumes, I look for those words that you just said: learn and grow, and folks who want to be a part of a team. And if I see the word passion, like they're passionate about something, whatever it is, like in the objective on a resume, like it doesn't matter. like, again, as Jarrell said, like, if you worked at if you serve tables or you work at a bar, call me. we'll all like, argue over you all, but any kind of like, if someone has 150% passion for this and they've never done it before, that's fine, because we can teach them, what they're supposed to do in their job, and we can help them grow. And I believe strongly in, bringing the younger generations on board, because we need it, especially, considering where this country is in terms of our democracy right now. So like, I don't care if you've never worked on a campaign before. If you're passionate about something and you want to work on a campaign, and you say, hey, I've never worked on a campaign before, but I really want to learn and I want to be a part of this team, that will get you to call, that will get me to call you. It's like that. You don't have to have some spectacular, if you did, you wouldn't be applying for an entry-level job. And, going back to what, another thing that Sarah said, you don't lie. I've gotten resumes from people about to graduate college who said that, because they were president of this club, on their campus or whatever, like they want to apply for the campaign manager position. So like, obviously, like folks like that, like that's not going to get them an interview. So, be real and talk about your passion.
I want to add really quickly to that piece. When I do interviews, same thing with Sarah. For me, entry level is like, get your resume in. I'm most likely going to give you an interview. If you're really talking about people, the impacts that decision making or whatever it may be, if you are centering community and organizing, that is so extremely important. You can hear it in passion, in tone, in your word choice. So really, like, a piece of advice I would lend is, get on the phone with like your friend or somebody that you trust, to kind of like get your tongue kind of like going already, so that like once you're in the interview, you kind of like already are in like the groove. So, be community centered. The reason why I hired some over others is because folks were more able to speak to the ways that issues impacted their community more than others, or that person showed that that they're aware that there are disparities or impacts that are different on different communities. And so that kind of cognitive awareness allows me to go, oh, okay, this is somebody that I can give context to, that I can teach, and that has the moral clarity and like the values to then carry what I teach forward, rather than somebody that's concerned about a title or concerned about how this can give them a stepping stone. And I understand that entry level work is a stepping stone, but first that requires you to be fully present and invested in that community and in that role that you're doing. And so that for me is so deeply important. And I will hire anybody that shows that they care about their community and can speak to that.
I just have to say, I'm so happy that this panel is being moderated, because I'm going to go back and watch it on my own time and take notes about what everyone's saying, because this is all really, really good advice. So since we are coming up on time, two of our fellows do have questions for the panel. As they're getting ready, I want to say, since we are getting close, if we could do like a rapid fire answers, like 3 sentences top, to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time. And also, I do want to give a shout out to our amazing co-sponsors. We have the California Young Dems, we have Blue Future, we have Young Dems of San Joaquin, and we also have Penn Dems from University of Pennsylvania. So thank you all so much for being here, co-sponsoring and helping us get folks into the audience. And so on that note, Graham, are you ready to ask your question?
Hi. So I'm going to ask, what keeps you motivated when the state of our country isn't really what it ought to be, when things aren't going well?
I got you. I'll do it real quick. people, the voters, the people that you talk to. I could care less about elected officials at this point, but the people do.
And if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And we have to stand up for the people who we know, even in good times, are having a tough time. Like, because I guarantee you, the forces that are working against all of us, at this meeting, they do not care about the folks who we do care about. And we have to stand up for them.
Thank you. All right. And our next question, Hannah to Harry, are you ready?
Yes.
Lovely. And if everyone could answer this one, again, in under 3 sentences, I would love that, because I think this is advice everyone needs to hear. Hannah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to know, what would you tell yourself if you could have a conversation with a 20-year-old version of you?
Definitely. Well, that was only 4 years ago, but learned a lot in these 4 years. I think the number one thing is that title doesn't matter. You don't always have to be in charge. And being a leader is not the title you hold. It's a character trait. It's about your actions. It's how you act. And sometimes the world needs really good followers. So don't worry if you did not get that higher position, that elected club leadership thing you really wanted. Something else is probably coming down the pipeline, and it might just even make you happier.
Be patient. Be patient. I think a lot of times we come out of college or high school and we want to take on the world, which is great, but it takes time. And guess what? Time starts going by a lot quicker when you get over 30 years old. So take your time. If you're in your career by 30, you should be very proud of yourself.
I would just say to remember that failure is a part of the journey. I think that, panels like this, you talk to mentors or people who are further along in their careers. Of course, they tell you all the great things, and it's a perfect story that showcases a journey that you might want to travel. But in reality, I could tell you about so many things that did not work out. But if they had, I literally would not be sitting here with you all today. So, learn from any failures you have. They hurt, they suck, but they are definitely there for a reason and can help you go in the right direction. But also, they might, protect you from things that you didn't actually need.
Oh my God, what would I say? I would say just like one, top of mind, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna grow up really fast. Time will move faster than you think. So be present, listen, and just like your time's gonna come, like your independence will come. Yeah, listen is probably the number one thing. And learn from people that are older than you. They have good things to say, even though we might not want to hear it all the time.
I'd love to build off of that. What Shaniqua said, learn from your mistakes. We all make a ton of mistakes. We all fail. And I try to I've worked with 48 campaigns now, but each one, to me, I still come to it as a learning experience. Like every single thing that you do in life, you want to keep learning and you want to keep growing. And going to something that Camille said earlier, I wish in my 20s, I had written stuff down. Like not just if there's like an issue in the workplace or whatever, but just, even if it's bullet point notes, which I started doing later in my career, which now I go back and I look at those notepads because sometimes I need that information to figure out where I need to go right now. And, there's definitely, there's so much to be learned in each job that you may not remember, 2, 3, 4 jobs or campaigns down the road. So definitely, I agree with Camille.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here to share your experiences and your time. and your energy, especially. We appreciate you coming out, speaking to people from across the country. I also want to give a major shout out to our incredible fellows who helped put this together. I am so proud of everyone in this room. It just one of those happy feelings. So I also want to give a special thank you to Eve Levenson, our National Youth Advisor, and Tamara Levenson, our Executive Director as well, for always being supportive of young people and making sure young people are empowered and put us in positions of power. I don't know many people who would give a 20-year-old the title of Field and Communications Coordinator. So thank you. And on that note, I'm going to kick it back to Eve so she can tell y'all how you can stay involved now that you have the advice to pursue a career in politics.
Hey all, thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much to our panelists as well. So one thing is, for those of you, especially I know that we have a lot of folks who are still in high school and college, if you are looking for something to do, you should apply for the Grassroots STEM HQ Fellowship Program, which is a really great program. You get to do things like come up with ideas for great panels like this and help support campaigns. Also, like I mentioned earlier, this is the first of what's going to be multiple programs, external sort of like educational programs that the curriculum committee has worked on. So we hope that you will stay up to date. And Mana just put in just put a link into the chat, which includes other ways to stay involved, including following the Grassroots STEM HQ on social media, applying for the fellowship. Does that include contact information for the panelists?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so you can see there also the LinkedIn or email for all of the panelists as well, if you want to reach out to any of them. As they just said, all of them are super interested in mentoring people, and I definitely have learned so much from the adult mentors that I've worked with, whether they're a few years older than me or a few decades older than me. So thank you all so much for having taken the time, and we hope that to continue to see you at future GDHQ events and opportunities.